And here we are, episode 39.
Nine. Today is International Father's Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is not Father's Day here in Australia, as
Yeah.
that's on a different day.
Yeah, I actually remember it being a bit different.
Yes. And this actually caused me problems when I was in North America because I couldn't get Father's Day cards around Australian Father's Day.
Mm.
So I had to plan months in advance and get cards when they were available.
All right. That's interesting.
See, it's these little things that people don't think about, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So nothing's happening for you this Father's Day since it's already
Uh,
happened for you?
oh, it's months away. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
No,
yeah.
yeah. I guess I can't even remember if it's already happened or it hasn't happened yet.
Actually, I actually don't remember what the date here is, but I think it's later in the year. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's my recollection. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So you had like a huge list of stuff to rattle down today.
I do. So the first one is the Old State Saloon. Have you heard of this establishment, Vernon?
No, but what you kind of gave me here looks interesting enough.
So it's in Eagle, Ohio. I've never actually been to Ohio. Have you been to Ohio?
Not Ohio, no.
No, no. Okay, so I've never been to that part of the US. Anyway, they are having a program for where they're offering free beers to heterosexual men. And apparently the program is actually called the Beers for Breeders, which I think is a cute name.
Okay.
Anyway, so shout out to the Old State Saloon. I just think that that's quite a nice touch for fathers in the
Yeah.
US.
Oh, yeah, for
I
sure.
think it may be for a few weeks or something along those
Hmm.
lines that they're doing it.
Yep.
Um, yeah, there we go. Heterosexual awareness. Sorry, it's under the title Heterosexual Awesomeness Month. So it's a month, but yes.
Hmm. Right. Is there any backlash to it or anything?
I believe there has been a bit of backlash, and of course that's helped
Okay.
to advertise it. And quite a lot of
Hmm.
people have only first heard about this as a result of the backlash, and then they've decided to go,
Yeah, that
and
sounds good.
buy a meal there or something like
Hmm.
that. So I hope it works
Yeah.
out well for the establishment.
Hmm.
So the next one is for Australia. It's the Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change. That's the full title. Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change. This is a real life government position that's been created
Yep.
by a state here in Australia. The state is called Victoria. It is certainly the wokest place in Australia and among the wokest places in the world. I think it also the capital Melbourne and where I actually was born, not far from Melbourne, and Toronto, Canada, where I happened to live for a number of years. I think they fight it out for the woke capital of the world, personally. So I guess I just got lucky that I happened to be from one of them and I lived right near the other one. So,
Right.
but anyway, Melbourne is the capital of Victoria. You would have heard of us talking about it quite a bit at various times. It's where the March for Men was in 2018. It's not an accident that we held the March for Men in Melbourne. Not that I was one of the organisers. I did speak at the March for Men in 2018, but I was not an organiser. But it's not an accident that it was held there, and we had quite a bit of resistance, and there was actually a police line around us while we were giving our presentations, and protesters on the other side of the police line. Yep, Victoria Police did a great job actually
Mm.
of keeping us safe. But anyway, that was back in 2018. It's Melbourne too, and Victoria will be featuring a little bit later, and something else I have to mention as well. But in the meantime, the Victorian state government has created the position of Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change. So they say it's the first in Australia. I think it may be the first in the world. I haven't found anything equivalent anywhere else. If anyone knows of any, please do tell us. But I haven't found a single example of this anywhere in the world. So
Okay.
yes, there will be a dedicated individual by the name of Tim Richardson, a politician, pontificating and telling men to change their behaviour. Thanks very much, Tim.
I vote on the secretary for changing politicians' behaviors because it's
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, this is starting to get ridiculous. I mean,
Yes.
not that it wasn't ridiculous what politicians can do anyway, but this whole idea of interfering in people's lives has to change already.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and it's getting out of hand in many different ways, and not just in the way they're needling men. There's a lot of other ways that yeah, politicians are just really getting into people's lives in ways that they haven't in the West for decades.
Mhm. Right. So let's hear some responses to this. So,
Exactly.
has there been kind of any kind of serious backlash? Anybody from Victoria? Anybody anywhere?
So, other parts of Australia, yes. I think probably some people from Victoria too. There've been quite a bit of media who have come out. Obviously, the less woke media have come out, and even some people who lean that way have come out and said, "Oh, it's possibly a little bit much." But in terms of the people of Victoria, I haven't really heard that much from them, actually, to be honest. In actual fact, at A Voice for Men, I published an article a few days ago. As long as Victoria has this position, the Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change, I think that men should change their behaviour in Victoria. Victorian men should change their behaviour by leaving Victoria and living somewhere else. So I
Hmm.
absolutely think, yes, I think men should change that one behaviour, the behaviour of living in Victoria, and they should move to other parts of Australia, New Zealand. Most Australian citizens can just move to New Zealand without a
Hmm.
visa and live there. All sorts of other places you can go. We'll be actually featuring some more information on that on the Voice for Men, places that you can go fairly easily to land visas, and yeah, get out of Victoria. And if Victorians really don't like men that much, I think maybe Victoria should do without them, possibly.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yep. So the next one I've got is Bionca Ellis. I just wanted to mention her. She's an American woman who randomly stabbed a 3-year-old boy to death.
Hmm. Yep.
So I
But
think we might
yeah,
go on. Go
no,
on.
no. Is this the? Isn't this like a one in like a few similar stories like this as of late?
Well,
Haven't we been hearing about women like randomly stabbing children as of late?
yeah, actually, there was one in Australia too. That was a couple of years ago, I think. Yes, and now I should really clarify here. And I'm usually very careful on this. I should really clarify. Bianca has just been charged at this stage. So, but yeah, I think we have seen I actually don't know much about what's going on behind the scenes there, in terms of what may have led up to this. But I think this is one we should watch closely. But you're right, there was actually a similar situation in Australia a couple of years ago, actually, and I think we might in a future episode we might feature that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds good. I bring this up because I think we're kind of at a point where if you see a strange looking woman, or even a not strange looking woman, kind
Mm.
of in your vicinity in any kind of public space, prepare to protect your children. Seriously.
Mm.
All right.
It's
Yeah.
it's very concerning what's happened here. I mean, there have obviously we know in the past there have been cases of women abducting children and so forth when they wanted a child. That's been, but yeah, in the last couple of years we have seen at least a couple of cases like this. And unfortunately, this poor little 3-year-old boy is deceased, and this was also in Ohio. So I think this is one we'll be following along with and I think in a future episode, let's talk about the other incident that occurred in Australia a couple of years ago as well. So, but the next one I have is political violence. So political violence is something that, well, first of all, there's been an increase in partisanship in the West. I don't think there's any great debate on that. There is a tendency for people on one side of politics to view the other side of politics much more negatively now than perhaps they did in the past in the West. And this has been something that I've been watching certainly for well over a decade. And I think, and you're seeing people actually on both sides talk about it. But something that goes along with this is political violence, which is the people believing that they have the right to attack politicians because they disagree with them. Now, I have zero tolerance for political violence. There are even if it's there's plenty of politicians I disagree with. In fact, I disagree with most politicians on at least a few key points. I would be it'd probably be fair to say. But I think we have to have absolutely zero tolerance towards violence against politicians because they are elected officials, and by all means, if you're not happy with them, turf them out, call them out on their bad behaviour. If they need to be, charge them with offences. But I think we have to have a zero tolerance on violence. And what we are seeing, though, is low-level political violence. That's what I generally call it. Nigel Farage was recently had a milkshake thrown on him. Now, some people think it's a bit funny. I still regard it as political violence. It is
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
at the lower end of political violence, but
Hmm.
it is still political violence. And my concern is what it leads to. And I'm actually reminded of a situation that happened in Australia a few years ago. Yeah, 2019 it was. Senator Fraser Anning was egged in public, and so he had eggs thrown at him. And the individual who did that has actually subsequently completely recanted, said he absolutely did the wrong thing, and apologised, and himself has rejected political violence. But it does concern me that we may see an increase in this sort of thing if we start to tolerate it.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you've had any in the US. I can't recall any. So Nigel Farage, obviously in the UK, Senator Fraser Anning
Yeah,
was here.
yeah,
Hopefully, you haven't had any in the US, but it is. I think
yeah,
it is something. Unfortunately, we're going to see.
yeah.
I dare say, we're going to see more of.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so bit of an ignorant person here. So what was Nigel Farage mostly known for? Is he kind of more on the non-woke side, or actually is he woke? I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know much
right.
about Farage actually.
Okay. So Nigel Farage is very much non-woke. He's actually somewhat of a traditionalist. So he was the leader of a party called UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence
Yeah.
Party,
Hmm.
and he was very much the against British membership in the European Union. He was actually a member of the European Parliament, an MEP, and the first when he got elected, he was in Parliament in the European Parliament, I think, for about 20 years.
Hmm.
When during his first session in the Parliament, he actually stood up. I think it must be his introductory speech, and he actually said, "The UK will one day leave the European Union." And many of the other MEPs laughed at him.
Hmm.
And at his fight, he was still there when the UK left the European Union, 20 odd years later. And he actually mentioned this in his speech and basically said, he didn't say "I told you so," but I think he came pretty close to saying "I told you so," and he did say something like, "Well, you're not laughing now." So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, so he was there. He was there for the final session, and then the British MPs left, and the United Kingdom left the European Union. He did not originate the term Brexit. His party did not originate the term Brexit. That term appeared spontaneously, I think. I'm
Hmm.
actually not sure if they even know who started it, but once the term had appeared, he grabbed it and ran with it during the Brexit campaign. He was a major figure. He ended up leaving the UKIP party, which ended up going in a different direction,
Yeah.
and he's now involved with the Brexit Party. And there's some discussion he may try to enter the British Parliament, but he's currently not an elected official, I understand.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Nigel Farage, and yes, he recently got milkshaked, and I believe they at least arrested the person who did the young woman who did it. I'm not sure if they were charged.
Right.
Not
Sure.
sure.
So is this thing? So so I keep hearing that it's milkshaking. Is it actually what is it really? The substance?
She threw a milkshake at him. So
Is it an actual milkshake though?
yes, exactly.
Okay,
Well, as I understand it.
okay, yeah, yeah, because the implications I got was it was something a little bit more dangerous or something.
As
Yeah, I don't know.
not to not,
Could have
not to
been
my knowledge,
mistaken.
there were a number of people who raised the possibility that it could have been something more dangerous, and it might be a milkshake this time and acid the next time was one comment that I heard, for example. So
Hmm.
the fact that she threw a liquid on him raised and was
Hmm.
able to do so raises the possibility that it might be some other liquid. I think that's certainly the gist of the comments I heard on the topic. Wasn't that this
Hmm.
one was dangerous, but they were making the point it could have been dangerous.
Hmm.
So as I said, I just absolutely 100% reject it, and I'm I mean I'm not British, so I don't really have a particular opinion on Brexit.
Hmm.
Um, but at least in relation to the UK. Uh, so I don't particularly have a strong opinion on Nigel Farage, I suppose you could say. But yeah, I just absolutely reject the political violence.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say, in the interest of full disclosure, um, I was hoping the UK had a closer relationship with Australia and New Zealand and Canada in something called CANZAC, which I think I've talked about before.
Hmm.
And CANZAC would be it would be easier post Brexit, but
Hmm.
it's somewhat happened. But I would like to think that the four countries could work together and hopefully do some good.
Hmm.
So you could say I'm pro Brexit from that perspective, but
Yeah.
I'm not a British person, so it doesn't have any direct impact on my life.
Sure. Yeah. But well, you can say you're a sympathizer.
Mm.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
like
well,
I
I
would
did
be.
it.
Yes.
I did it. I was sort of somewhat hopeful by virtue of the fact that it may facilitate cancer, which is something I
Hmm.
support. Yeah.
Right.
Getting back to Victoria, on to the next topic.
Hmm.
So yeah, I told you Victoria would be back, the wokest part of Australia. So there've been a series of incidents. Not all of them have been in Victoria, but three of the four incidents that I have here have been in Victoria. We've talked about some of these incidents. There's been another one since we talked last, I believe in the last video we talked. So that basically what's been happening is there've been a series of incidents where boys have been in school, high school, have been engaging in behavior which has got them labeled as misogynist. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't agree with the behavior of the boys, but I believe that it's the woke push that is essentially driving this sort of behavior. I believe essentially the behavior is reactionary. And
Of
I
course.
don't think
Yeah.
it's yep, and I don't think it's an accident that three of the four incidents of this that we've heard about in the mainstream media recently have occurred in Victoria, which is the most woke state.
Hmm.
So um, what's happened is we had one in October, back in October 2019, where I have to check up on what the actual incident was in that one. I made a note of all the others, but I didn't check what the incident was in that one. But basically, the young boys were being called out for the behaviour in relation to the young girls. I had actually forgotten about this one, but I recorded it back in October 2019 on Wiki for Men. So this is great. This is one example of where the wiki can be so useful to record this information. But in March 2024, we had students ranking of female students,
Hmm.
and that one was actually at a school here in Queensland. But then in May 2024, we had Yarra Valley High School in Victoria, again ranking of female students. And in June 2024, this is the newer school called Bacchus Marsh Grammar. We actually had essentially there were AI nudes with the pictures with the faces of the female students at the school essentially
Hmm.
superimposed. So using
Okay.
AI. So yeah. So I've got four incidents that have occurred. Three of them have occurred within the last few months. And the feminists here are really up in arms over it and calling the boys misogynists and so forth. I believe at least one student has been expelled from one of the schools in relation to these incidents. But I don't think it's an accident that it's focused on Victoria, and I don't. And as I said last time, we're going to see more of this. So that's what I
Okay.
said during
Yep.
our last meeting.
Episode. Yeah. Hmm.
Yep, episode. Thank you, and
Yeah.
I'm saying it again. We're going to see more of it because I
It
think
was.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it is reactionary, and everything that the feminists accuse men of doing. Uh, I think the only reason we appear to see any of it is when it happens in a reactionary way.
Yeah,
This is not something that is in some kind of men's nature or anything like that, or historically an actual male problem or anything like that. It is not.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Anything that kind of comes through and manifests itself is reactionary after the fact that the feminists accuse men of acting in such a way. It's more of a very protesting kind of a reaction.
Oh, absolutely. And men, by and large, and boys too, really they really try to protect women, as we know, and this is something we see across societies. People debate about whether that's innate or whether it's cultural and so forth, but we see it across many, many societies. And I remember from when I was young too, it, the young boys really tried to avoid speaking disrespectfully about young women. Um, and often I would hear young women speaking disrespectfully about young men, and I've been told many times that that has occurred. For women who I know have told me that many times that has occurred too. But for by and large, men and boys try to avoid doing that.
Hmm.
And here we are. We're starting to see this sort of thing, and I absolutely, like you suggest, I think it's really reactionary,
Hmm.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but there it is. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it helps to contextualize these sort of things too, because um, I think people kiss a little bit too much ass to the feminists and say, "Well, this is absolutely bad," but but what about us? Or what about when females do it and they don't listen? So,
Mm,
so,
mm.
so it's one of those things we got to be careful about. I think we kind of we need to keep on emphasizing that the reactionary bit in a way that this is not natural phenomenon.
Yes,
Make them
that's
consider
right.
the source and show them a little mirror on their face, basically.
Mm, yes. And I just checked up what St. Kevin's what the situation was with St. Kevin's in 2019. I actually wrote an article on it. It's on a Voice for Men called "The Punishment Should Fit the Offence." And yeah, there were a bunch of boys on a streetcar, what we call a tram in Australia,
Hmm.
singing a song
Hmm.
about women that had some sexual overtones. You could say the song's actually on a Voice for Men if you want to look at it. Uh, this was again in Melbourne. As I said, three of the four incidents have been in Melbourne
Hmm.
or Victoria. Bacchus
Yep.
Marsh Grammar is outside Melbourne. Yeah. So
Hmm.
three of the four have been in Victoria.
Gotcha.
Yes, I wouldn't be. I don't know if we're seeing this in other countries as well. I haven't seen any reports, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing, as I said, a lot more of this both in Australia and overseas.
Mm. Yep.
So those are all the ones I had for this episode.
Hmm.
Uh, I've of course got my standard comment on Zoe McClellan, who is still outstanding. She's still
Yeah.
hanging in there.
How long have we gone with this episode here?
Or probably about half an hour, I suppose,
Okay,
I
sure.
would
Yeah.
estimate.
Yeah, I definitely want to try and get this going on a little bit longer because I always feel like I've been letting the listener down if it was like a little too short, because it's really kind of you know all the craziness in this world kind of
Mm.
it's like where to start really, and that's kind of in its own way kind of a problem for me to kind of really figure out what to kind of bring up in a given show or anything like that
Mm.
because
Mm.
like what solutions do we have, what can we really do about it is it sort of becomes this melange of things that like women killers they're absolutely out there, but what justice can be done once the kid is dead, you know,
Mm. Mm.
and so forth. So there's a lot of you know is there anything we can add to this is the thing I've been kind of racking my brains
Mm.
with you know.
Well, I mean, as you say, you can't bring justice. You can punish someone, but you can't roll back what they have done.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, for me, it's really about the courts treating everybody equally. What I
Hmm.
object to is the double standard, which is proven all around the world. There's plenty of information on that. We've got it on a Voice for Men, we've got it on Wiki for Men, and so forth. I would like everybody who goes before the courts to be treated the same, which is the way our system is supposed to work, but it is not, in fact, the way our system
Hmm.
works. So, to me, that's what when I bring up issues like this,
Yep.
it's really about raising awareness, of these sort of problems, and making sure and watching too, making sure that justice is done, and that it's done hopefully equally, even though we know that to a large degree that's still not going to be the case,
Hmm. Yep.
and raising awareness when it isn't.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be sure. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like I feel like sometimes, I'm doing a podcast and I'm really the most unlikely person to actually do a podcast sometimes. And I kind of reminded of what Robert Fripp of King Crimson once said, that
Mhm.
music is, and I'm paraphrasing, music calls upon unlikely people to let it be, to to make itself heard or something. And he was
Oh, that's
kind of,
interesting.
yeah,
Mm.
and he was kind of referencing the fact that when he started out doing music, he was actually tone deaf. But
Oh,
he,
okay.
yeah, yeah, but he's regarded as one of the greatest guitarists in the world, and in one of the most sophisticated bands in the world, and so forth.
Mm.
So, and I bring that up because it's like, I don't know how a lot of podcasters do it, but this whole kind of onslaught of kind of zero stammer sort of, constant influx of information, constant input. It's
Mm.
really difficult for me to do such a thing. So I'll just, it was just a funny observation that I kind of
Well,
heard about myself, that I've seen about myself. So,
practice makes perfect,
mm,
I think, or even practice makes better, if not perfect.
mm,
When I first got involved, which is around 2013, I was very nervous about dealing with the media,
mm,
and I found it quite difficult. And excuse me, and I guess in some ways I was probably quite lucky that some of the journalists that I first dealt with were actually, actually really quite supportive, which may seem surprising to some people because but certainly, many people have had bad experiences with the media.
mm,
But I've had journalists who disagree with me, but they're still respectful and they're still truthful, and they still, give me an opportunity to say my piece. And anyway. A number of them, I was probably quite lucky. A number of them I got when I was when I was first getting involved and doing media interviews and so forth. I said were quite supportive, and I remember my first live radio interview. I was quite nervous, and the journalist who was interviewing me was actually quite a well-known journalist in Australia, uh, anyway, yeah, he just spoke to me beforehand, and he said, "Have you done radio before?" I said, "I've done recorded
mm,
radio. This is my first live one." He said, "Don't worry, relax, you'll be fine." And
mm,
also, to another trick I picked up somewhere, and this only works with audio interviews. It doesn't work with video, but
mm,
and I don't know if he told me this one or whether it was someone else, but anyway, smile. If you smile, there's an autonomic feedback essentially. Maybe in a study I read of it because I did
mm,
read about studies early on, and essentially, if you smile, it actually triggers your body to feel this. So when you're relaxed and you're happy, you
mm,
smile, but also smiling can. So they found it's a bidirectional relationship. If you smile, you can actually make yourself feel happier and more relaxed.
mm,
And I actually did this for my first few radio interviews. I actually deliberately smiled. And this obviously wouldn't work on a video interview. So,
mm,
but I did a number of interviews for the Red Pill screening in Brisbane, which was the third one in Australia, and
mm,
for the ICMI 17. So quite a few radio interviews there
sure.
around that time. And yeah, so basically it really is a skill. And since then, I've done radio interviews cold, done media interviews cold, and
Mm,
been no problem.
mm.
So
That kind
yeah.
of gives credence to the idea of fake it till you make it, doesn't it?
It does, especially the
Yeah.
smile. I would have loved if
Mm,
someone take a photo of me. Here I am, I'm really nervous
mm,
with this radio meeting and I'm grinning like this,
mm, yeah. Mhm. Right, to be sure.
Um,
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So part of me is, like, I'm still kind of nervous about doing this kind of thing, even though it is an actual non-live recording, by the way. And
yes.
yeah. I'm trying to imagine how the situation would change if this were live. Speaking of, you know, I I've heard some people wish that this were done live, so feedback can come
Okay.
in. So I guess that's something we'll figure out down the line. We're just kind of, we we're just trying to figure out the best time for us to actually do this recording. That's why we want to be sure, we can get everything done in a time sensitive way, and we don't we don't screw up in our live setup in terms of technical difficulties. That's why we don't have it quite going on yet. I don't know. Is there any other excuses I have,
Yeah, right.
Robert?
Time zones. Time zones are a good excuse.
Mm,
So, no, I mean, probably we could work around. I mean, you're in Florida, I'm in Queensland, which is
yeah.
the Florida of Australia, and
Yes.
the time zone probably works out reasonably well. It's
Yeah.
we started about 10 p.m. my time, and it's I think
Hmm.
about 8 a.m. your time. I
Yeah.
lived in the same time zone. I was in the Greater Toronto area, which is I think the same time zone as you, or not far off
Hmm.
it. I think it's the same one actually. And so I got quite used to dealing across this time zone as well when calling people back in Australia.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, I think it is doable. We certainly could consider doing a live session. I
Yeah.
would be interested potentially even having some people on
Yeah.
if they wanted to. We did that at ICMI 21. Was it 21
Well, I
also?
mean, we were doing the whole hula thing in
Yeah.
21.
Yeah, 2021 was the one where you were doing the US leg, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, this was
Right.
pre
Yeah.
goalpost. So yeah.
Yes, that's right. It was 21. And I actually there was one particular we had so for those who don't know, ICMI 21 was an online conference and it was really a tour de force. 6 days, 24 hours a day. We went and we had three teams, Europe, North America, and Australia, and we had just constantly rotating. So we would work through for the 8 hours and then we
Hmm.
would do a handover to the next team
Hmm.
and so forth. And then bear in mind, this is all we're all just volunteers doing it because we feel it's important.
Yep.
And that really was. But anyway, there were a couple of people who were quite active in the chat during the conference, and after a few days, I actually started inviting them onto. I had a sort of few open sessions where it was just a
Yeah.
general chat, and I actually started inviting a few people on from the audience if they were interested,
Hmm.
just if they were, no
Yeah.
pressure, but if they were willing to jump
Right.
on.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
poor things, a couple of them got a bit nervous actually. It's one thing to comment, but it's quite another to be on the stream.
Yeah.
And again, it's
Hmm.
probably easy to forget now because I have done quite a bit of streaming and so forth over the last
Hmm.
11 years and done a lot of live stuff. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. We were all exhausted after 6 days of it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, to be sure.
it's quite a lot.
Now that I got this momentum going on, I've got at least two other subjects to speak about. If
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Excellent.
sure. So how long have you gone? By the way, we kind of started a bit late on our end, and yeah, yeah. And to further add to the whole live thing, I don't know who's up this early in the morning in the United States, and
On
it's
a
even
Sunday.
earlier because I'm Eastern time, and the rest of the United States is even earlier, and it's crazy
Oh, good
late over
point.
there in Australia, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Good point.
and what else? I guess the only people that are actually kind of midday is probably the British, I think. Um, uh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
So,
just checking. It's about 2 p.m. in London at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Hmm. Yeah. But yeah. So so this is actually kind of I was looking at my own Three Stooges shirt, and I've kind of gotten inspiration here.
Okay.
So, so there's another. So I'm 2 years late in talking about this one, but because this happened 2 years ago. But there's a comedian, Ryuhei Ueshima, who was a member of the comedy trio, the Dacho Club.
Mhm.
Um, uh, he passed away in what looks like a suicide back two
Okay.
years ago, back in May 2022. And this had a lot to do with some of the side effects of the lockdowns, I think, or
Mm.
I don't mean lockdowns, because Japan was kind of different, but it was basically
Mhm.
the fact that, uh, there's been more distance in general, right? And 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 he was having trouble finding actually comedy work up his alley, basically, which had a lot to do with physical humor. And I think Japan was kind of entering a stage of, you know, what's the best way to put it? It's more like a sterilization of the comedy that's kind of going on. I don't remember exactly who's kind of what organizations involved in these sort of things, but
Mm.
it's like, they kind of want to make the comedy less painful looking. I guess it's kind of more, more keep things verbal or something like that, and or not really all that impactful if there is physical comedy. But the Dacho Club and Ryuhei in particular,
Mhm.
is a big physical comedy kind of guy. Huge on the slapstick, and it's basically he was probably like the most uh, funny guy, at least in my opinion, in the
Mhm.
Dacho Club. And so he couldn't find work, and so I suppose he killed himself out of the that
Oh.
depressive state. So, and I kind of want to just talk about, I'm looking at my Three Stooges shirt, and that's physical comedy, right? And
Mhm.
you know, there's a lot of um, I sometimes say that, I sometimes see one thing I see sometimes is that, some people prefer so-called genuine wit over slapstick or something like that, as if physical comedy is not legitimate, basically.
Mm.
Yeah, and I object to that strongly because one of my favorite comedians, Shimura Ken, he's a huge physical comedy guy, and that's not just
Mm.
slapstick. It's just kind of like not really using words, just kind of using visuals to make the
Mhm.
audience laugh. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like so.
That could be very effective. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and he was um household name. Basically everybody knew who this guy was, and so yeah, I want to defend physical comedy. I want to defend slapstick. I don't think we have enough of it anymore. And and
Mm.
judging by the way Japan's looking, I think it's going to be even less.
Is this coming from a woke background? Is that starting to get a hold in Japan, and that's what's stopping this sort of physical comedy, or is there
The
something else going
relationship
on?
between J Japan and woke is kind of murky to me. It's like I
Okay.
think because in completely other matters, a lot of Japanese like manga creators and like anime creators and so forth tend to resist woke basically because
Mm.
namely in that they don't want to appeal to political correctness. That's their words. Basically, it's
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Most of them, yeah, try to do that, but it's not like Japan doesn't have its own set of problems too, in their own right. Even if they don't
Mm.
really mean to be woke or anything like that. So yeah,
No, the reason I
yeah,
asked is because woke so often go after comedians, and comedians have really been clipped in many countries. I was
yeah,
wondering if
right.
something similar was going on there.
Right, yeah, sure. Well, even in terms of verbal sense, there's a lot of Japanese humor that is not going to pass for a second in the Western woke mindset, basically. Yeah. So, like, because Shimura Ken, and by the way, the Dacho Club tended to work with Shimura Ken in the later part of his career. So there's a relationship between those comedians, but there's a lot of sex jokes that that feminists would cry absolute foul at, basically. Um, and like this one sketch in which Shimura poses this kind of old man posing as what is the equivalent of a TSA officer, and when the cuter the girls come, he gets more.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. I think I see
Mm,
where this is going. Would
mm.
you, I don't know if you've ever seen it, would you describe that as Benny Hill type humor? I don't know if I'm showing my age now, but Benny Hill was a British comedian from the 70s, and it was a lot of sexual innuendo, a lot of physical
Mm,
comedy. I don't think they
yeah.
even play Benny Hill on TV at all
Sure,
now.
yeah.
And
Well, if Benny Hill has the physicality that I think, and I don't know Benny Hill. I know that theme song, that Benny Hill theme song.
yes, exactly.
That's
It's very well
just
known.
about it. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I he's
but he's
I used
British,
to love
right?
that as a kid. Yes, exactly. I used to love that
Okay.
as a kid.
Now,
Yeah.
now, the reason this is kind of perplexing to me is because every time I try to, so I've spoken to people like, obviously I've spoken to people like Mike Buchanan and Elizabeth Hobson and so forth. And
Mm.
uh, if it's okay for me to kind of gauge them as like a general British mindset on comedy, they don't really like physical comedy that much, I think. Like, because I tried to show them some of my favorite Three Stooges sketches, and they're not as into the physical stuff.
Well, I
So
guess I mean there's plenty of variety of comedy coming out of the UK. I mean, this is the land of Monty Python as well, which of
oh
course
yeah,
is one of my favorite comedy
yeah, same.
groups. Yeah. And Benny Hill, which I always loved. I think there's a wide variety
Hmm.
of comedic expressions that have
Hmm.
been popular in the UK over the last few decades. There's
Hmm.
another one called The Goon Show, which was a bit before my time. That apparently I think
Hmm.
that was fairly similar. There was as well as Monty Python. There was another. There were other British comedians that were around the same time too, and the names have slipped my mind. But how could I forget? The Goodies, of course.
I
So
heard about the goodies. They
right, so
killed a person. They killed a person by making him laugh so much.
oh yeah, yes, that's right. That's true. For those who don't know, there's a documented case where a man, I think in his 50s, laughed himself to death watching an episode of The Goodies, and it was
Hmm.
certified that he'd actually died. He had a heart attack as a result of
Hmm.
laughing. So yes, that's right. So, there've been other cases suspected, but I think his is the only certified case.
Hmm.
That's right. So The Goodies and the Monty Python crew, not all of them, but most of them, actually all went to Cambridge University at the same time. They're in a group called the Cambridge Footlights, which still exists, and by the way, has gone woke. I'm sorry to hear. I'm sorry to say, but the Cambridge Footlights is a comedy group or troupe from made up of university students at Cambridge since its existence since at least the 19th century, and it's brought out a lot of good comedians, as I said, including the Goodies and Monty Python, and a number of them actually knew each other while they were doing this, and then of course so it became greats. But unfortunately, I looked into the Cambridge Footlights recently, and yes, it's all looking very woke now, I'm
Hmm.
afraid. So I don't know if we'll be seeing
Yeah.
much in the way of good comedy from them again.
Yeah, I think,
To say,
comedy is going completely down. We're kind of entering this kind of this era where you're just labeling yourself a comedian, and if you don't laugh at them, you're probably a sexist. If it
that's it.
or if they're a woman or something like that. So we're entering the era of programmed behavior. And or expected behavior, basically prescribed behavior is the better way. We're entering the era of prescribed behavior.
Which of
You,
course
uh
comes back to what we were talking before about the politicians and how
mhm.
invasive,
Yeah.
increasingly they've become. Yeah.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
And this is happening. I mean, also too, a lot of people think that this is. I do routinely hear people say that this is a problem in the Anglosphere. Let me be very, very clear. It is not just a problem in the Anglosphere.
Right.
Spain and Israel are both countries which have quite misandric laws on the books. There are
Hmm.
many, many others. There's Germany, where it seems to be a cultural obsession
Hmm.
for men to not pee standing up for some reason.
Yeah.
I say, German men, stand up for your rights. That's all I can
Hmm.
say.
Yep. Stand up
I
for your
believe there's
rights at the toilet.
exactly, and I believe there's also a similar problem in other ends of Nordic countries as
Hmm.
well. So,
Hmm. Right.
but yeah, this is absolutely. But places like Spain, Israel, there's some other places as well where there are really quite misandric laws out there as
Hmm.
well,
Yeah.
and the court systems are every bit as bad, if not
Hmm.
worse, than we see in the Anglosphere.
Yep. To be sure. Yep. And I said that, the relationship between Japan and woke is kind of murky, but the more I think about it, the more interaction English speaking these Japanese people are, like say they're YouTube content creators or so forth. I think these sort of people find themselves most influenced by the woke stuff, if at least to kind of stay global. I think is I'm just guessing at their motives, but there's some people that are just kind of insufferable.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure. Um, I don't. I dislike people like content creators like that Japanese man Utah, or there's some others that I can't even think of the name of, but they make a lot of gynocentric appeals, like trying to gauge people about this Western political bullcrap idea. And I think you know uh, they only show like the ones that gets the big hits in terms of reaction that appeal to the woke mentality. So there are problems over there. It's just we're probably not seeing the ones that fight back so much.
Mm.
Yeah, if that made any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably not a bad area to talk about in a future
Hmm.
episode,
Yeah,
actually.
right.
Mm.
Hmm.
So, did you have any other items you wanted to talk about?
It's not really hysterically important, but if you wanted to hear it,
Yeah.
okay. So we're talking Magic the Gathering again.
Oh, okay,
So
good.
okay, yeah. So
So I
recently we
played.
had the latest direct to modern set, Modern Horizons 3, and this had a few changes that I'm kind of salty about. Uh,
Mhm.
bi- so, so so Rob, I don't know if you played Magic recently enough to know some of these mechanics. So
I
there's
played a
so
long time ago, for those who don't
okay,
know.
yeah, sure. So so a while back, there's a new mechanic introduced in the game called Tribal. It's
Yeah.
basically a way to associate creature types onto non-creature things, basically. So we would have things like Tribal Instant Fairy or so, which is just an instant spell, as you know,
Mm.
but it also counts as a fairy spell. So it kind of attaches creature types um, to non-creature things. So if you're kind of following me there. Now they recently had a change to it and called it Kindred, and they've errated all tribal to be called
Ah,
Kindred,
right.
and supposedly it's for cultural reasons. And they've
Yes.
done crap like this before, but this is
Yes.
one of the more glaring recent changes.
Yes.
And nobody look, nobody looked at tribal and said,
Mm.
"Yay, we're making fun of tribal people."
Yeah, and
No,
also too,
no
the
one
word
did.
tribal is very, very generic,
Yeah.
and can be and is a term that is applied across
Hmm.
the entire world. I suspect they're thinking about this in a North American or US context or something like that.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's a very generic word used in a
Hmm.
wide variety of different in
Yeah.
different contexts for groups of
Hmm.
people. So
Sure. Yeah.
you could even talk about people being tribal in terms of a subculture, actually. So there's all
Hmm.
sorts of uses for the word. So.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that sounds like woke coming in.
yeah, and it's kind of one of the more strange ones because every Magic player that I know, even the stupid woke ones, um, use the word tribal because there's also a different context to the word tribal here. It's when you have like an elf tribal deck or a merfolk tribal deck. You kind of get what
Oh, I
I'm saying,
see.
right?
Hmm.
Like your deck is a bunch of elves or a bunch of
Yes. Yes.
merfolk, dinosaur, what have you. We use that term as kind of like this deck is focused on this creature type and so forth. So
Yes.
I'm gonna start really calling foul when everybody starts using kindred instead. I'm gonna be really, but here's the thing, like it's so um ingrained in our it's so habitual at this point
Mm.
to use the word tribal. I don't know if it would
Mm.
happen actually.
Yeah,
So it's
it
kind
might.
of I don't know why uh
They may
only
remove it
yeah.
officially, and
Hmm.
it'll stay in use anyway. I have a
Yeah.
quick question about Magic the Gathering these days. Do you still have thalids in the game? The creature called a thalid.
Yeah. Well, so a thallid, basically, I think they've always been kind of grouped since the modern rules errata that they were called fungus. They're called fungi,
Okay.
basically.
The
Yeah,
reason I
yeah,
the reason just when you mentioned about the tribal decks
yeah,
and so forth, which is not a term that was used when I played
yeah.
25 years ago, but
Yeah.
there were of course these creatures called thalids, and they you end up with lots of them. They sort of spawn in large numbers.
Yep.
And somebody created, it's my favorite name of a deck of all time. Somebody created a deck where you had stone giants tossing
hmm
thalids, and that was the attack, and they called it a toss thalid deck.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
love that one. People have some come some clever names, but to me, that was
Mhm,
just the most clever name I've ever heard. That was great.
mhm. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The Ballad
Yeah.
to deck.
Yep. Sure. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. Thalids are still a thing. But as creature types, they're called fungi, basically,
Right.
and they tend to make creature tokens called saprolines and so forth. So yeah, that's still going on. Another change they made that is probably less of a cultural thing, but I still suspect it is that Nagas are snakes now. And Nagas are
Ah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
Nagas are, basically like snake people, right? And
Mm.
it kind of has roots in cultures like Hinduism and so forth in terms of
Mm.
mythological, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
But they're now just called snakes, and the Viashinos are now just simply called lizards, even though Viashino
Wow.
may be on the card name. So I
The,
don't know. It's I'm just trying to
that,
rant about minor things that serve no purpose.
virtually all of the not a very high proportion of the creatures you will see in a sort of a modern fantasy world, a lot of which goes back to D&D and so forth, the early days of D&D, but a lot of it comes from different cultures, like elves and dwarves, for
Hmm.
example, were
Right.
drawn from different cultural traditions, and
Yep.
they somewhat take a different context, different take on them sometimes. But
Yeah.
if they start banning all that sort of thing, they'll, well, actually, they already had a problem with orcs. I think you probably know about that.
Yeah, well, don't give them ideas. They haven't gone after the orcs yet. In fact,
Oh no, they did. There
I'm
was one. They went after the orcs a few years ago in D&D.
well, D&D did, yeah, but
Oh yeah,
I'm
sorry.
I'm
Yes,
saying
yes.
I don't give the magic
Oh, yeah. Right.
one's
Right.
ideas.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
right. Yeah,
Exactly.
but I'm surprised that the magic people hasn't they haven't gone after dwarves yet instead of and replacing them with little people.
Species, little people. I love it.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But yeah, like this is all unnecessary horse crap trying to appeal to uh so this is the other side of the feedback effect of reactionary. It's like woke companies listen to a loud minority of woke people, right? But
Mm,
then
yes.
as they make those changes, some of the non-woke people feel like they have to follow in the company's footsteps and take on woke ideology, so forth. So it's much more insidious than just the fact of you know just a company listening to a small, loud minority. Um, yeah, it's much more. Uh,
To the
yeah,
extent that those people are even their customers, which in a lot of
hmm
cases it seems that they are not. Well, and while we have seen a wide variety,
yep,
a long stream of get woke, go broke
hmm
incidents.
yeah, hmm yeah. And the big thing is, I don't think Wizards of the Coast are going to necessarily be broke for sure anytime
No,
soon. Yeah, right.
that's right.
I mean, the most recent thing that they did that hurt was probably the 30th anniversary thing, where they literally printed over expensive alpha proxies.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah,
doing proxies for alpha cards.
yeah, right.
Is that right?
So, right, it's just that, they were trying to reduplicate the entire alpha set that you can't
That's
even play in
that's
any,
right.
right.
Because
And
for those just for those who don't know, alpha cards but
mhm,
in Magic the Gathering are cut differently, and you can't actually use them
mhm,
in play with other decks
yeah,
because you can
right,
see
yeah.
the difference in the cards. So yes, so for them to cut the alpha cards again is really interesting, odd, because that mean as you say, you can't use those cards in a modern deck.
Well, yeah, and, the biggest problem is, there were like one thing to buy them. I think it was like $1,000 or something. It's like, it was just horribly expensive,
It's crazy.
Right, yeah. Like cards you can't play,
Mm,
because they're proxied. Because these are
mm,
official proxies from Wizards.
mm, mm.
Right, right. And they're ridiculously expensive. Like even the stores can do it. They can't sell it in good conscience.
No, it's very
Right,
strange.
yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
they would have to warn people they can't be played and used in regular play.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean,
Mm,
yeah. So so that's the one that hurts the company at least for a bit. Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
But as you say, Wizards of the Coast is absolutely enormous. So
They are.
they're not
Yep.
going anywhere. Um, yeah, I guess Disney probably would be a good one to talk about on a future occasion too, because there's been a lot
hmm
going on there. But I think that would probably be something, yeah, for a future episode. It might be an episode all on its own, actually.
hmm Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm out of steam now, so I think
Mm.
that's all I've got so far.
No worries. I've got, all right. So I'm just going to mention Zoe McClellan.
Let's do that.
As of June 2024, a warrant is outstanding for the arrest of Zoe McClellan in relation to charges of kidnapping, child stealing, and child custody deprivation. McClellan was reportedly residing in an apartment in River Ridge, Louisiana in April 2021 and may still be residing in the area. McClellan grew up in the area of Port Orchard in Washington State and may have returned to the area. Some sources believe that McClellan has left the United States and is residing in Canada or Costa Rica. Prior to disappearing, McClellan was known to use the alias Sarah Chandler. Anyone with any information should contact the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Now, in relation to Costa Rica, this is something that I've just learned recently, that there are some people who are interested in her facing justice and believe she may be in Costa Rica. And that's all I have for this evening.
Yeah, same here. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you. We'll see you next time for episode 40.
40. All right. Yeah. Chat to you later.
Bye.